knows every shadow like a lover's name. Her steps a rhythm, a deadly game. Fingers chase the edge of time. She rewrites the world, one line at a time.
Chapter 10, Delhi Reckoning. The flight back from Washington to Delhi had none of the taut, clandestine glamour of private jets and diplomatic manifests. It was a commercial long haul on a crowded Boeing whose only concession to mystery was the number of passengers who refused to close their laptop lids, even during turbulence. Seatbelts, safety videos, cabin announcements delivered in Hindi and English. It was the ordinary scaffolding of global movement. Ananya rode in seat 32A, nothing like the front-of-cabin anonymity she'd enjoyed between Delhi and Moscow. Her boarding pass identified her as Ananya Rao, a mid-tier business analyst returning from a compliance workshop in Chicago. The passport tucked into the seat pocket in front of her bore the same name, linked to a real but low-activity Indian tax ID seeded years earlier by a raw logistics cell for future use. Her body was bone-tired. The fading bruise along her cheekbone pulsed dully, a souvenir from the Dulles toll road. She'd slept in 90-minute fragments on the flight's early leg, waking each time to the faint glow of seatback screens, showing bad movies and flight trajectories inching across digital maps. Now, at somewhere past 30,000 feet over Central Asia, she watched the terrain slip by in ghostly outlines on the in-flight map. Istanbul, Tehran, Karachi. Names that had once been mere dots were now layered with memory. Safe houses, meetings, operations gone right and wrong. She flipped her phone to airplane mode, not because she believed the plane would fall out of the sky if she didn't, but because routine was a way of anchoring herself when every other parameter seemed foreign. On the inward-facing screen, stored pages from news sites told the story Leverage's collapse had written for the world. Glitches rock global trade nodes. Authorities blame systemic vulnerabilities. BSE narrowly avoids catastrophic flash crash. Experts cite luck and robust circuits. Pharma supply disruptions in India, South Africa, Brazil, unexplained but stabilizing. The articles danced around what had truly happened, groping for explanations that didn't require admitting that someone, somewhere, had attempted to rewrite the world's economic baseline. Analysts muttered about underinvestment in logistics tech, about the dangers of over-centralized port management software, about the need for public-private partnerships in cybersecurity. No one mentioned the phrase Operation Leverage. They couldn't. It didn't officially exist. She saw hints, though, phrases Hargrove would have appreciated. Asymmetric vulnerabilities. Systemic risk accentuated by alternative alignments. The doctrine survived even as its primary toolset lay crippled. Irina's last secure message, delivered over an encrypted channel while Ananya waited at Dulles for the boarding call, had been terse but clear. Leverage orchestration. 80% degraded. Remaining 20% fragmented. No global cascade possible in current configuration. Hargrove, temporarily grounded. Likely under internal review, not public sanction. Malhotra debrief ongoing. Saran's patterns mapping. Delhi is next front. Choose your battlefield. Ananya had replied with coordinates, not words. Lodhi Road, Chanakapuri. The physical and conceptual heart of India's covert apparatus. By the time the pilot announced descent into Delhi, the cabin lights were dimmed, window shades in varying states of openness. The thick haze over the city turned the morning sun into a diffuse orange, painting everything in muted warmth that couldn't quite penetrate the fatigue in her bones. The aircraft kissed the runway with a bump. Applause broke out from a few passengers, more habit than genuine celebration. Ananya exhaled slowly. Back on home soil. Enemy territory, both. Immigration was uneventful. The alias passed machine verification. The officer flicked through the pages of her passport with practiced boredom. Stamped it without comment. No secondary screening. No curious questions about her recent trip. For the systems tracking her name, she was a low-risk traveler with a short corporate itinerary. For the systems tracking her real identity, she was a ghost. Flagged, hunted, but not connected to the woman rolling a suitcase out into the humid Delhi air. Outside, the city greeted her with the assault she had grown up with, a blast of heat and humidity. The thick mix of petrol fumes and frying food. The layered cacophony of horns, hawkers, and engines. The air seemed to hum with activity even at that hour. She hailed a cab using cash, no app trail, no digital receipt. The driver, a thin man with a bloodshot gaze, asked, "Gahan, madam," without enthusiasm. "Chanakapuri," she said. "Near the Russian embassy." He nodded once, pulled into traffic. The road out of the airport slid past the familiar landmarks, corporate parks, advertisements for international schools, political billboards with smiling faces and vague promises. In the back seat, the vibration of the cab sent a dull ache through her bruised muscles. She watched the city's layers peel open. Delhi was a palimpsest, Mughal ruins, Lutyens geometry, glass towers stitched together with power lines and roadside stalls. It had taught her many things. How power disguised itself, how institutions lied with a straight face, how ordinary people moved through extraordinary events with more resilience than any analyst's model could predict. Right now, the city moved as if nothing had happened. Newspaper vendors shouted about petrol prices and cricket matches, not about near-miss economic collapses. Office workers in creased shirts clutched tiffin boxes, not emergency kits. School children waited for buses, staring at their phones. The invisible war remained invisible. The safe house in Chanakapuri sat on a quiet lane lined with trees and embassy walls. It looked like any mid-level diplomatic residence. A 3-story block with peeling paint and barred windows. A dented scooter parked out front. Inside, it hummed like a nerve center. Irina met her at the door, her hair pulled back, circles under her eyes deeper than before. A half-empty cup of coffee sat on the table behind her. A wall-mounted television showed a muted news anchor gesturing at a bar graph. The ticker at the bottom read, "Market jitters subside, RBI reassures investors." "You look like hell," Irina said without malice. "Likewise," Ananya replied. They stepped into the converted second bedroom, where the operational core was set up. 3 workstations dominated the space, their screens full of charts, scrolling code, and geospatial overlays. 2 SVR analysts in plain clothes sat hunched over keyboards, their heads adorned with discreet headsets. On one screen, an Indian news channel's website displayed an article about an internal audit at the Ministry of Finance, citing unnamed sources. On another, a raw log feed showed packet captures from Indian networks tagged with markers that matched Leverage's signature. "Malhotra?" Ananya asked. "Safe," Irina said. "Deep inside our embassy, under layers of protocols even your people know better than to breach lightly." His debrief has been thorough. He's exhausted, but he keeps talking. Guilt is a powerful motivator when properly directed. She held up a slim file. He gave us everything he could recall about his handler. The pseudonyms, the way they phrased taskings, trends in the kind of data they prioritized. More interestingly, he gave us his own logs of what he passed to your agency, his attempts to steer damage away from core assets. He tried to thread the needle, Ananya said, save his son, leak just enough to satisfy them, not enough to destroy us. Failed on all counts. Yes, Irina's tone was neutral, but her eyes carried no sympathy. People who think they can manage enemies from within usually underestimate everyone else in the room. "And Saran?" Ananya asked. The main screen shifted to an access log overlay of RAW's internal systems, sanitized, partial, but annotated with markers derived from Malhotra's and Frankfurt's data. "Still at his desk," Irina said. "He pulled a late night. My guess is he received the same encrypted dump we pushed to your trusted colleagues around 2 a.m. and has been damage assessing ever since." Ananya's mind traced the pattern before leaving the U.S. They had arranged for anonymous data drops via dead inboxes, old training addresses, and physical USB sticks left in secure drop points to 3 officers inside RAW whom Ananya considered both competent and incorruptible. Junior enough to be overlooked by Saran's faction, senior enough to make noise if they smelled rot. Those officers now had copies of the Frankfurt manifests, Meridian client maps, segments of Operation Leverage's code, and Malhotra's confession. heavily redacted to protect sources, but clear enough about who had been feeding what to whom. "It'll take them a few hours to correlate everything," Irina said. "They will see the pattern. And then they will realize that the only person with both access and authority to have made the necessary changes is your friend." "Saran isn't my friend," Ananya said. "Colleague then," Irina said. "Mentor, adversary. Labels don't matter. What matters is that when they go knocking on his office door with questions, he will either double down or fold." "If he doubles down," Ananya said, "he'll purge logs, destroy evidence, activate any failsafes Hargrove gave him. If he folds, he'll try to cut a deal, perhaps offer partial cooperation in exchange for a soft landing. And you," Irina said, "want neither scenario to happen without you being in the room." "Yes," Ananya said simply. Irina studied her face. "You realize what you're proposing, walking into Lodi Road as a fugitive to confront a senior analyst who has spent months undermining your operations." "I realize," Ananya said, "but this doesn't end with an anonymous report exposing him. If he controls the narrative, he'll spin it as misguided cooperation, blame it on Malhotra, frame leverage as an unfortunate side effect of information sharing. He'll keep his hands on the levers." "And if you confront him?" Irina asked. "Then at least someone will say out loud what he did and why," Ananya said, "even if it's only between us." Irina considered this, then nodded once. "We can give you a window, 15 minutes, perhaps 20, where his office is, less visible than the rest of the building." Lodi Road that morning looked like it always did. Green verges, white-painted sidewalks, government sedans pulling into gated compounds, flagpoles catching the weak breeze. The RAW headquarters blended into this landscape, a low, spread-out complex behind high walls, its entrance marked by nothing more dramatic than a security kiosk, a driveway, and a sign bearing a mundane agency name used for front-facing paperwork. Ananya approached not through the front gate, where visitor badges and retina scanners waited, but via a service access, used by maintenance contractors and supply deliveries. She wore faded blue coveralls, a cap, and a pair of glasses whose lenses subtly distorted facial proportions without drawing overt attention. The badge on her chest belonged to one Rakesh Sharma, HVAC technician, a real person, currently sleeping off a night shift in a flat in Carroll Bog, unaware that his credentials were being borrowed by a ghost. At the service gate, the guard checked the badge, compared it to the manifest on his tablet, and nodded. "Sub-basement filters?" he asked. "Yeah," she said, mimicking the gruffness of a man used to being invisible. "They're complaining about dust in the server rooms again." The guard rolled his eyes. Always something. He hit a button. The turnstile clicked. Inside, the corridors were exactly as she remembered. Beige walls, CCTV domes in the corners, the faint smell of cleaning fluid and recycled air. Bulletin boards bore the usual posters about cybersecurity best practices, anti-corruption hotlines, wellness seminars. For a moment, walking through, she felt a pang, nostalgia mixed with something like loss. This building had once represented purpose for her, the physical anchor of a life spent in service, however flawed. Now she moved through it as an intruder. Irina's voice murmured in her ear, low enough that no one around could hear. Lobby cameras on loop, corridor feeds randomized. You're a blur in the system right now. But blurs attract attention if they persist. 15 minutes, no more. Understood, Ananya whispered. The service elevator near the loading dock carried her up to the 3rd floor, where the Cyber Countermeasures Division had its offices. The lift doors opened onto a familiar hallway lined with closed doors, nameplates, and the occasional poster about upcoming conferences. Saran's office was at the far end, a corner room with a narrow window that looked out over the lawns. The door bore his name, Arvind Saran, senior analyst. She paused outside, listening. No voices, no movement. Good. 2 sharp knocks, in the cadence of maintenance. "Come in," Saran called. His voice sounded tired, frayed around the edges. She entered, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Saran sat at his desk, screens displaying graphs, logs, and email threads. He looked up, irritation already forming. "I told facilities I don't." The irritation froze into something else. His eyes widened. Recognition pierced the disguise. "Ananya," he said, the name half exhale, half accusation. She reached up, pulled off the cap, and slid the glasses down his nose, just enough that he could see her clearly. "Good morning, Arvind," she said. He rose slowly from his chair, one hand moving casually toward the desk drawer on his right. "Don't," she said. Her tone was calm, but there was an edge in it that made his hand stop. He hesitated, then eased back, fingers curling on the desktop instead. "You're insane," he said softly. "Do you have any idea how many alarms your face would set off if the system knew you were in the building?" "The system doesn't know," she said. "For the next few minutes, your office is a blind spot, courtesy of some very annoyed Russians." His gaze flicked to the corner where a camera dome sat. "You compromised HQ surveillance?" "Not entirely," she said. "Just here, just now." On her hip, the tool bag looked like maintenance gear. Inside, nestled between coils of wire and filters, sat a non-lethal neural dart pistol disguised as a bulky tool. Her hand rested on the bag's strap, not yet reaching in. "What do you want?" he asked. "Truth," she said, "and maybe, if we're lucky, choices." He laughed once, a humorless burst. "Truth, from a spook. That's rich." She stepped closer, placing a tablet on his desk. Its screen glowed with an open document, Malhotra's confession. Translated and annotated. 18 months of coerced collaboration scrolled down. Dates, taskings, data points he'd passed, pressure they'd applied. At several key points, the text highlighted references to Arvind's clearance and Arvind's override. Saren's eyes skimmed. His face didn't flush with surprise or guilt. It settled into something harder to parse, resignation perhaps. "You've been busy," he murmured. "We've been alive," she said. "Because we moved faster than your friends expected. Frankfurt, Reston, Northern Virginia. You know what leverage was meant to do." He leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking. For a moment he looked old, older than his years, older than she'd ever seen him. The lines around his mouth deepened. "I know what you think it was meant to do," he said. "Then correct me," she said. He stared at the tablet, then at her. "You think I betrayed India," he said. "That I sold us out to Washington in exchange for, what? A comfortable retirement? A green card? Some promises about my family?" "You tell me," she said. "What did they offer?" He sighed, rubbed his temples. "They offered sanity," he said. "Our leadership lurches from one alignment to another, trying to balance Moscow, Beijing, Washington, Brussels, Riyadh, Tehran, Tokyo. We claim strategic autonomy and then tie ourselves to Russian oil, Chinese hardware, Western software. It's a house built on contradictory foundations. And your solution was to let an American operation nearly collapse our markets," she said. "That's not sanity. That's arson." "Arson for a firebreak," he said. The West was going to assert control one way or another. Sanctions, debt traps, or this. Hargrove's proposal was the least bloody option. Controlled pressure, designed to force us back into a stable orbit. Stable for whom? Ananya asked. For the millions of Indians whose medicine deliveries went missing. For the workers whose livelihoods were almost wiped out by a synthetic flash crash. For the system, he said. For the idea that if someone must be in charge of the global order, better it be the one with the longest track record of surviving its own mistakes. "Tell that to Iraq," she said, "to Latin America, to Eastern Europe." His eyes flashed. "Tell your Russian friends to look in a mirror. Believe me, they have," she said. "They just don't flinch as easily." Silence stretched between them. The hum of the office's air conditioning filled the space, along with the faint tick of a wall clock. "You had other options," she said. "You could have pushed for genuine reforms, strengthening our own infrastructure, diversifying our dependencies. Instead, you chose to be a conduit. Why?" His shoulders sagged fractionally. "Because I've spent 30 years watching reforms get buried in committees," he said, "watching politicians treat intelligence as a tool for internal scoring, not external defense. Every time we built something resilient, it was sold off, underfunded, or sabotaged for temporary gain. When Hargrove's people approached, they offered a different lever, external pressure that our political class couldn't ignore. And you decided you'd rather be the one steering that pressure than someone else you didn't know," she said. "Yes," he said. She let that sit. She understood the logic even as she rejected it. "And Malhotra?" she asked quietly. "His son?" Saran's jaw tightened. They found his leverage point before I did, he said. I merely facilitated the channel. You told yourself he was a willing collaborator, she said. I told myself he would do it anyway, if not through me, he replied. So better to keep it within a controllable structure. You sound like him, she said. He said he thought he could manage them from within. Perhaps we both overestimated ourselves, Saran said. She slid a second document onto the desk. Printouts of internal RAW logs, annotated with anomalies, accesses that shouldn't have happened, log rewrites at odd hours, emergency patches that funneled traffic through temporary nodes. These are your fingerprints, she said. Every time I got close to leverage, you nudged the system to show me something else. And when I didn't obey the script, when I quarantined the Mumbai anomaly, you moved fast to burn me. I moved fast to protect the operation, he said. You were a variable, an unpredictable one. Leaving you in the system risked exposing the entire structure prematurely. They would have simply replaced you with someone more pliable and continued. So you made the choice for me, she said. Yes, anger stirred, cold and sharp. It wasn't the hot rage of betrayal she'd felt when the arrest team had stormed into the Ananta vault. It was quieter, heavier. You've had 18 months to fix this from the inside, she said, to steer it away from catastrophe. Instead, it took external intervention to stop it. A Russian intervention, he said. Do you understand what that looks like? How easy it will be to paint what you did as treason, as collusion with a foreign power to attack a U.S. facility. Are you planning to be the one doing that painting? She asked. Not me, he said. I don't have to. The narrative will write itself. You have put this agency in an impossible position. We can either admit we were compromised, which will destroy our credibility, or blame you and the Russians, which will damage our relations with Moscow. You forgot a third option, she said. We can tell the truth. All of it, including your role. He smiled without humor. And you think they'll choose that? I think, she said, that you are not the only person in this building who cares about what happens to this country. And not everyone wants to be a minor functionary in someone else's empire. A muffled chime sounded near the corner of the room. Irina's voice cut in. 10 minutes, Ananya. Security system's starting to glitch. Their IT is sniffing for anomalies. Your black box window is closing. Saran's eyes flicked up, sharp. The Russians really are listening, he murmured. Yes, Ananya said, and they're not the only ones. Your colleagues have data now. The ones you dismissed as children with idealism. They're reading Frankfurt's manifests, Meridian's client lists, Malhotra's timelines. It won't take them long to see your pattern. Then they'll come to me, Saran said, and I'll explain. Context, necessity, the need to deal with a reality, not a fantasy of non-alignment. And when they ask why you framed me specifically, she asked, will you tell them I was necessary collateral? Yes, he said, because you were. She regarded him for a moment. Do you regret any of it? She asked. He hesitated. For the first time since she'd walked in, uncertainty crept into his eyes. I regret that it failed, he said. Not the attempt. If leverage had forced Delhi to choose stability, history might have judged us harshly, but our grandchildren would live in a world with fewer shocks. Now, chaos will continue. The wrong people will learn the wrong lessons. Like Hargrove, she said, learning that she needs to be even more ruthless next time. Yes, he said. The clock on the wall ticked louder in her head, metaphorical and literal. I'm not here to convince you, she said. Somewhere along the way, we ended up on different sides of the same argument. You chose external control as the lesser evil. I chose autonomy, messy as it is. And now? He asked. Now, she said, I need you to hand over the kill codes. He blinked. What? The overrides you embedded in our defensive patches, she said. The dead man switches Hargrove's people insisted you include, so they could trigger or disable certain systems at will. We found some of the hooks in your logs. We don't have the actual keys. You do. He leaned back, smile returning faintly. You think I'd give those up? If you don't, she said, someone else will find them eventually, but not before they cause damage. And when they do, you'll have no leverage left with anyone. Not with Washington, not with Delhi, not with me. You think you can offer me anything I want? He asked. No, she said, but I can offer you a choice. You can go down as the man who tried to manage an external operation and failed, or as the man who shut it down before it could be resurrected. The door handle rattled once, a test. Someone in the corridor tried the lock. Arena. They're starting to sweep. Unauthorized network patterns emanating from this room. IT just flagged your office, Arvind. He looked at the door, then back at Ananya. She could see the calculation in his gaze. The probabilities of salvage, the odds of being able to spin, the risks of open confrontation. You think if I cooperate, they'll spare me? He asked. No, she said. I think if you cooperate, they might contain the damage you've done. Maybe even quietly retire you instead of charging you. Either way, India's systems won't sit on a hidden fault line waiting for the next Hargrove to detonate. He looked down at his hands. They trembled, just slightly. You always were too direct, he said. And you always were too fond of gray, she replied. He exhaled, reached to his keyboard. Fingers danced across shortcuts, calling up a hidden console. On the screen, a list of keys appeared, strings of characters next to labels. BSE mitigate, NPCI override, port lossy, DR flag. These are one-time use codes, he said, designed to be executed from specific nodes. Some have already been triggered in test scenarios. Others are dormant. He inserted a USB drive into the terminal. I can export them. Their existence is now a matter of record. Deleting them locally won't erase them from Hargrove's backups. But this copy will allow you or your Russian friends to build counter tools. He turned the drive in the port. The progress bar crawled. The door handle rattled again, harder this time. A voice. Sir, network anomaly in your room. IT wants. 5 minutes, Saran snapped. I'm in the middle of a critical review. The voice hesitated, then retreated. Arena. 3 minutes, Ananya. That's all I can buy. Their IT just killed my loop on the main corridor. Cameras are waking up. The progress bar hit 100%. Saran ejected the drive, held it up. For a second, he closed his eyes. Take it, he said. You'll do what you want with it anyway. She took the drive, slipped it into an inner pocket. Thank you, she said. For this, if not for everything before. Don't thank me, he said. If I truly believed in their path, I'd have destroyed these. Maybe I'm just tired. There was a beat, a space in which a different conversation might have happened. The moment passed. The door burst open. 2 internal security officers in plain clothes stepped in, hands near their belts. The taller one froze mid-step, seeing Ananya. Nam, he began, confusion canceling his rehearsed lines. Ananya reacted before thought. Her hand dipped into the tool bag and came up with the neural dart pistol. She fired twice in quick succession. The first dart hit the taller man in the upper chest. His muscles seized. He collapsed against the doorframe. The second dart caught the other officer in the thigh. He staggered, eyes rolling back, then slumped. Saran flinched back in his chair, eyes wide. You just made this far more complicated, he said. I tend to do that, she said. The office now contained an unconscious security pair, a compromised senior analyst and a flagged fugitive. The clock had moved from minutes to seconds. The window? She asked. Gone, Arena said. Every sensor they have is screaming. I can scramble some of it, misdirect a bit, but you're not walking out the front door. The window, Ananya repeated aloud, eyes flicking to the literal one behind Saran's desk. It overlooked a landscaped strip between the main building and a smaller annex. 2 floors down, a service lane ran parallel to the wall. A drab white van sat parked there, engine idling, back doors open. You did say you'd give me a window, she said to Arena. 2 meters wide, 6 meters down, Arena said. Concrete ledge halfway. Roll or you'll break something. She stepped around the desk, grabbed Saran's static-laden hair gently. Come with me, she said, or stay and face whatever story they craft without your input. He looked at the unconscious men, at the terminal, at the open logs containing his secrets. You'll use whatever I give you against me, he said. Yes, she said, but I'll also use it against them. He swallowed, stood. I'm too old for this kind of exit, he muttered. Consider it field training, she said. They both grabbed the office chairs and smashed them into the window. Glass spiderwebbed, then shattered outward in a cascade of shards. The alarm system registered the break, adding a fresh layer of siren to the chaos. Ananya swung one leg over the sill, then the other. The drop looked longo from outside, the ground farther. The air smelled of grass and exhaust. She jumped. For a moment, weightlessness, then impact. She hit the ledge hard. rolled instinctively, shoulder absorbing the worst of it. Pain flared, then settled into a throbbing ache. She slid off the ledge, landing on the lane's rough surface, in a crouch. Saran followed a second later. Less gracefully, he hit on his side, grunting as air left his lungs. The van's door slammed from the inside. "Move," a voice called in Hindi. Raw's accent, not Russian. One of the junior analysts she'd trusted, recruited quietly to this madness. Ananya hauled Saran up. They scrambled into the back of the van. The door slammed. The engine roared. As the van pulled away, Ananya caught a glimpse of Raw's main entrance through the rear window. Officers were spilling out, weapons drawn, eyes scanning. To them, it would look like an internal incident gone very wrong. Irina's voice returned, breathing hard. "That was excessive," she said. "You have a talent for overcomplicating extraction." "I prefer to think of it as multi-threaded," Ananya said. Saran leaned back against the metal wall of the van, chest heaving. He closed his eyes. "You've destroyed any chance I had of controlling my own narrative," he said. "No," Ananya said. "You gave that up when you decided other people's lives were acceptable collateral. What you did today, handing over those codes, that might still matter. Not to those upstairs, but to what's left of this country's autonomy." "And what about you?" he asked, opening his eyes. "What do you gain?" She thought about it, about the quantum key, about the smashed orchestrator, about the fact that somewhere in Moscow, Irina was now holding both Leverage's corpse and its DNA. "Leverage taught me something," she said, "that we keep pretending we're playing on someone else's board. That we can either accept their tools or get crushed. But we just proved that's not entirely true." "You proved they'll hit back harder next time," he said. "Maybe," she said, "but they'll also be looking over their shoulder. And so will you. And so will my own service." She looked at him. "The board is messy," she said. "But for the first time in a long time, we just pulled a piece off it, completely instead of shuffling it around." The van merged into Delhi's traffic, swallowed by a sea of autorickshaws, buses, and scooters. Ahead lay debates in back rooms, purges framed as voluntary retirements, leaks to friendly journalists, quietly buried inquiries. Behind lay a trail of shattered glass and neutered kill codes. Between them sat Ananya, no longer belonging to any clean category on Raw's charts. Reckoning had begun, not just for Delhi, for everyone who believed they could turn the world's invisible dependencies into weapons and never have those weapons turned back on them.
Her eyes burn cold, her touch ignites.